Good morning, everyone. Wishing everyone a beautiful day. It's a nice and bright, sunny day out here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I'm still in my quarantine. When I mean still, it's a 14-day quarantine, and I believe today's Tuesday, so I have another 2 more days, and I'm out on Friday. Yeah, it's about 2.5 days actually. So let's look at some parts of what we explored yesterday in the class, in the practice. We were looking at freeing the xiphoid process, the bottom sternum. As we're breathing in, there could be a tendency, as in when we breathe in, we pull the xiphoid process in when we breathe in. And this could cause a restriction to the natural movement of the diaphragm, as when we breathe in, the diaphragm kind of moves slightly downwards and then spreads out. So if we can release the xiphoid process as we breathe in and allow the abdominal region to be heavy. What does that mean? It means understanding that right underneath the dome of the diaphragm is the liver, mostly on the right. And then see if we can not lift the chest up too much that we pull the liver up and kind of draw it into the dome of the diaphragm, but avoid that, but allowing the liver to remain heavy. Now, when we say it's like allowing the liver to be heavy, what does that mean? How do I do that? Do I imagine that? As much as you're not imagining that you're breathing, you don't have to imagine it. You just breathe out and wait and see if you can. So much of excitement sometimes pulls the abdomen upwards. See if you can relax the abdomen, stay there. And that is what I'm referring to as heaviness there. Allow the liver to just remain downwards heavy. And then from there, so we have the liver being heavy and going downwards into the cavity of the pelvic region. And from there, see if there's any freedom that comes to the spreading of the diaphragm, the contraction and the retraction of the diaphragm as we breathe in and as we breathe out. Then with all of this information, then again there's a tendency of imagining that this is happening or implementing, because we have a tendency mostly in the practice of yoga is trying to teach the body to do something that maybe the body does not know how to do. Versus what we are doing here from the previous week. We've seen 7 classes already from the previous week. If you've been following, we're not teaching the body anything, rather we're waiting for the body to respond, and let that be our train of education, or let that be that space or environment where we can educate ourselves by waiting for the body to respond, rather than implementing ideas. I'm not saying right or wrong to that. I'm just it is just an approach that I am interested in, to see where this body is and then to react from there, rather than adding information by not checking if that information is going to sit on the platform and where the body is already at the moment. Good morning. So it's like checking the temperature. If you're cooking, you're going to check the temperature of that dish before you start adding on ingredients into it in the same place. Before you add or apply any information into this body, can we check and find out if the body has that particular temperature, or if that temperature is going to what is the body telling me right now, if the breath is what I'm going to explore. Yeah, just checking that. So today we're going to go through that a fairly similar plan, yeah, fairly similar template here. The only thing that we're going to add into is the pulsation into the diaphragmic region that we did yesterday with our fingers, and with movement. If you remember that movement we had in from a seated position, I would like us if we could explore this movement and pulsation from a supine position by rolling the shoulders, or rolling the upper arms in and the shoulders in, to then kind of create a dotted crease that divides the liver down towards the lower abdomen and diaphragm up onwards. So it kind of folding into that diaphragm and folding out, folding in, and then folding out, and see if that kind of creates a distinct highlight, a distinct line in between the lower abdomen and the lungs, and if that helps us free the diaphragm a little bit more. And then again, I would wish not to force you to feel in any particular way, but rather you be open to how your body is presenting you, what kind of information your body is presenting you. And if you don't feel anything, then that's how you feel, and that's what you're receiving from your body. You don't have to always feel something, or you don't have to always create something to feel something. Keep a sense of openness to what the body is presenting you, without translating or kind of in judging if the body should be performing in a particular manner in order to produce a similar train of results that should be or could be similar with what I am informing you. That's quite a lot of information. So what I would like to do is to start this checking the climate of the body by lying on my back. So you will only be able to see from my trunk above, because I don't have much space. So that's it. I lied on my back with my knees bent, so that softens my back, and then maybe I'm good. And then place my arms on either sides of my trunk, and feel free to come into the position that you feel that you are comfortable in at this present moment. It could be seated, standing, a side reclining, or a supine, or even a prone position. It may be difficult when we pulsate if you're in a prone position, so rather if you could be in a supine position, that would be more functional. So as I'm lying down on the floor, so I'm going to talk in relation to lying down on the floor. I can sense various parts of the back of my body coming in contact with the floor, especially the primary curves, the back of my head, the shoulder blades, the sacrum, and my buttocks. The heels. So these are stronger parts of the body, which is fairly strongly in contact with the floor. I even have the elbows in the back of my palms, some parts of my lower arm. And then there are the secondary curves, which is the back of my neck. It's not in contact with the floor. And partially my lower back. the wrist, the back of the knees, the Achilles, the secondary curves which are away from the floor. And let's sense and see if I could feel that my left, after a while now, maybe it's been a minute or more, that the left side of my body is more in contact with the floor rather than the right. How about you? How do you feel? I can feel my toes are slightly cold and my fingers, especially the pinky finger and the ring finger. Fairly some amount of information about the weather of the body. And we build a sense of acceptance to how the body is. And then from there, we can gently open our eyes. Let me go into the breathing portion of this practice. I would like to bend my knees and stand my feet. So my knees are bent, my feet is on the floor. My knees are bent. After bending the knees, I can sense how the pelvic region kind of tilts slightly towards a posterior environment right now as I bend my knees, and that creates a flexion in the hips. See if that is something you are sensing. So from here, we are going to pulsate the diaphragm. So as we looked at yesterday, the double dome in the diaphragm, you have the dome of the diaphragm, and then on the left side you have a smaller dome, which is the inferior part of the heart. So it's not only one dome, it's one and then another small dome above. So I call it a double dome. I'm making it with my hands. So there's one dome and then another dome. So as we breathe in, the dome is going to get pushed down slightly, and as we breathe out, it comes back into its natural dome-like environment. So that's a very soft and gentle trampoline kind of effect happening there. Now, what happens is that the tendencies in the xiphoid process here, right at the bottom sternum, is that we have a tendency of pulling the sternum in as we breathe in. That could be something habitual. Again, I'm saying it could be. And it could also be the tightness in the pectoral region that causes the shoulders to drop into the anterior part of the body. That kind of tightens the entire front of the chest and draws the sternum down. So as we breathe in, it doesn't really release or keeps some amount of freedom in the chest, so there's some tightness in the sternum. So these are various reasons. So see that number one is to, as we breathe in, we are freeing the xiphoid process, and secondly is to keep some amount of heaviness in the abdomen. So we're not pushing or pulling, especially the abdomen up, or pushing the abdomen down. Rather, we were waiting for the abdomen to get settled. And especially with lying down on the floor, gravity helps you much more than you need to do for the body. This kind of gravity helps you place things in place. So let's start by taking the tips of the fingers and sensing the xiphoid process, which is the bottommost part segment of the sternum, and from there just very gently pulsating the attachment of the diaphragm to the ribs, going all the way down. Can't really go all the way back. And then I'm coming up. And I'm tracing the attachment once again. Kind of cat massaging. It's a sigh. And then from there, now I'm placing my hands on the xiphoid process. Now I'm using my breath to kind of curiously direct my breath into this region and see if there's, whether I'm pulling the xiphoid process in as I breathe in, or if I'm freeing the bottom part of the sternum as I breathe in. So I sense a fair amount of freedom there. I'm not drawing my bottom sternum in as I breathe in. There is some freedom, a fair amount of freedom there, right at this bottom part of my sternum. Now from here, let's pulsate the diaphragm, or kind of highlight the diaphragm by with movement. I'm breathing out. And as we breathe in, let's move the tailbone down towards the floor and the shoulders down towards the floor. So that's going to increase the arch on the lower back. In fact, bring the arch further into the dorsal region a little bit more. And as we breathe out, I would like us to roll the upper arms down so that the thumb descends into the floor, and then posterior tilt by drawing the pubis towards the shoulders and the shoulders towards the pubis. Breathe in. The pubis going down away from the shoulders. The shoulders are rolling out. and breathe out gently. Shoulders moving towards the pubis and the pubis moving towards the shoulders. Let's continue. I choose to close my eyes. Let's take one more cycle. Return back to a neutral environment, and feel free to keep your legs long if your knees are bent. And observe the breath in your diaphragm. Any kind of change, even a shift in awareness or a shift in the rhythm of the breath, even a shift from the sympathetic to more of a vehicle tone in the parasympathetic system. See if we can sense that. We can continue this. We can go into a second cycle of this, which is what I'm going to go into. A second cycle of this with my knees bent. This time I try not to turn my palms down, but I'm going to show you from here. I'm going to keep my palms ascended, so it's more of my shoulders turning in and shoulders turning out. So I don't include the lower arms into this movement. Okay. My knees are bent. Breathe out. Breathe in. Move my shoulders down and the tailbone down. So a fair amount of extension in a supine position of the spine, and then as I breathe out, I roll my shoulders towards my tailbone and tailbone towards my shoulders. Continue a few more pulsations in your own rhythm. My last cycle. And come to a very neutral position, and I'm keeping my legs long. Just be curious and check if there's any freedom that comes to the diaphragm, any freedom that comes to the xiphoid region. We could stay here, or we could go into a third cycle of this. Would like to end the session, and if you want to continue or you want to offer yourself in a more relaxed position, you can disconnect the live. And the idea, just to remind, the idea of most is based on not adding on information into the body, especially when you have issues with your breath, challenges at times where we can't feel our breath, where we feel there's tightness in the breath, there's heaviness in the lungs. Rather than adding pranayama or pranayamic ideas or practices onto the breath, these explorations are for us to see what is the pranayama of the breath. What is my breath doing? And allow that, see if I can enhance or help my breath do what it's doing by just being there for the breath. So that's the idea of this exploration. Till we meet again tomorrow, have another beautiful day. Wishing you all well. Love you all.